Hannah Claire was 19 years old and completely homeless. She had no family anymore, no one who would claim her, no place in the world that wanted her. Just a weathered backpack, a sleeping bag, and $5 that she had been saving for months by working odd jobs at hostels and restaurants across Central America. And with those $5, she bought an abandoned treehouse sitting 70 feet high in the canopy of a remote rainforest in Costa Rica, in a place so isolated that the nearest village was 12 miles away, and the nearest person who might have cared about her was someone she had learned long ago never to trust. The treehouse had been built in 1987 by an American businessman who had fallen in love with the rainforest and wanted to create a sanctuary high above the forest floor. It was constructed from reclaimed wood and built into the massive branches of an ancient strangler fig tree that had stood for over 300 years. The structure had deteriorated significantly over the decades. The wooden platform was rotting in places. The roof was partially collapsed. Vines and vegetation had overtaken much of the structure, but the tree itself was still strong, still alive, still standing firm against time and weather. Hannah had come to Costa Rica 6 months ago after her parents died in a car accident when she was 18 years old. They had been driving home from a family dinner when a drunk driver had crossed the center line. Both of them were killed instantly. Hannah had been living with her grandmother at the time, but her grandmother was old and sick and unable to care for her. Hannah had no other family. She had aged out of the system quickly, and suddenly she was completely alone in the world. She had used her parents' life insurance money to buy a plane ticket to Central America, thinking that if she could just get far enough away from the place where they had died, maybe she could stop hearing the sound of the police officers telling her that her parents were gone. But the money had run out quickly, and soon she was homeless, working whatever job she could find, sleeping in hostels when she could afford it, sleeping on the street when she couldn't. When she saw the listing for the treehouse online, something inside her recognized it immediately. A place to belong, a place to heal, a place high above the world where she could breathe. She had saved $5 by working extra shifts, and when the property went to auction, she was the only bidder. The first night in the treehouse, Hannah climbed the rope ladder as the sun was setting over the rainforest. The canopy around her was alive with sound. Birds calling, insects singing, the rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. She spread her sleeping bag on the most solid part of the wooden platform and lay there, listening to the forest come alive around her. For the first time since her parents died, she felt something like peace. Over the following weeks, Hannah began to explore and repair the treehouse. She reinforced the wooden platform, replaced rotted boards, patched the roof. She worked carefully and thoughtfully, understanding that she was not building a house, but creating a sanctuary. She was not just fixing a structure, but rebuilding her life. It was while she was replacing boards on the floor that she found it, a wooden box hidden beneath one of the rotted floorboards, sealed with a latch that had locked it shut decades ago. Her hands shook as she carefully pried it open. Inside were letters, dozens of them, tied with faded ribbon, and beneath the letters was a photograph, an old color photograph from the 1980s, showing a young man and woman standing on the platform of this very treehouse, smiling, with their arms around each other. Hannah recognized the man immediately. She had seen his photograph in her parents' old albums, photographs from before she was born. It was her grandfather, her father's father, who had died before Hannah was even born. Her father had never spoken about him much. She knew only that he had left the family, abandoned them to pursue dreams in Central America, and had never come back. Hannah opened the letters with trembling hands. They were written by her grandfather to her grandmother, unsent letters that he had never found. The courage to mail, letters full of love and regret and longing, letters explaining why he had left, letters apologizing for leaving, letters describing his dream of this treehouse sanctuary where he could think clearly and heal from the wounds of his past. The most recent letter was dated 1989, the year before he died. At the bottom of the box was a piece of jewelry, her grandmother's wedding ring. The ring that her grandmother had always said had been lost years ago. The ring that her father had always wanted to have back to remember his mother. the ring that Hannah's grandmother had mourned for decades. Hannah sat on the wooden platform of the treehouse, surrounded by the sounds of the rainforest, holding her grandmother's ring in her palm, and understood something profound. Her grandfather had come to this place seeking peace. He had built this sanctuary to escape his pain. And somehow, across the decades, across death and time and distance, he had left it for her, his granddaughter, a girl he would never meet but whom he had somehow known would need this place. She spent that night reading every letter, learning about the grandfather she had never known, learning about his struggles, his dreams, his love for her grandmother that had never died even though he could never go back. Learning that sometimes people leave places not because they don't love the people they leave behind, but because they are so broken they cannot stay. The next morning, Hannah climbed down from the treehouse and walked to the nearest village. She used some of her savings to make an international phone call to her grandmother. For the first time since her parents died, she heard her grandmother's voice without anger or disappointment. She told her about the letters. She told her about the ring. And her grandmother wept, not from sadness, but from understanding, from knowing that her husband had loved her even across the years of separation, that he had kept her ring with him always. Hannah stayed in the treehouse for 2 years. She worked remotely, doing freelance work that allowed her to earn enough to survive. She restored the treehouse completely, turning it into a beautiful sanctuary. She started a small business offering overnight stays to travelers who wanted to experience the rainforest from this unique perspective. And slowly, she healed. Not from the loss of her parents, that wound would always be there, but from the shame and anger she had carried about her grandfather's abandonment. She learned that sometimes people break in ways that look like abandonment. Sometimes love takes forms that we don't understand until much later. Sometimes the greatest gifts are the ones left behind for people we will never meet. When Hannah turned 21, she returned to the United States and reconnected with her grandmother. She brought the letters and the ring. And for the first time in decades, her grandmother smiled when thinking about her lost husband. Hannah is now using the treehouse as a healing retreat for young people who have lost parents or family members. She tells them her story. She tells them that sometimes the people we lose leave us messages across time. Sometimes they leave us sanctuaries. Sometimes, if we listen carefully enough, we can hear them telling us that we will be okay. Hannah Claire was 19 years old and homeless when she bought an abandoned treehouse in a Costa Rica rainforest for $5. It was the best $5 she ever spent because what she found there was not just a home, but her grandfather's love, preserved perfectly across decades, waiting for her to find it. If you believe that miracles exist, subscribe to this channel.